tell us what WeConnect is about?
So Women Energy Connect, or WeConnect, is a platform connecting people in the energy sector. Our intention is that this new and growing sector grows in a way that is fundamentally inclusive and diverse, and recognizes the importance of a diverse and inclusive workforce and industry. And Women Energy Connect was founded on those principles to start driving inclusion and bringing the focus onto inclusion as the renewable energy industry grows and as the energy industry in general grows in South Africa and on the continent.
And then, why is it so important that we have this discussion as the sector itself grows?
So inclusion is a very, very interesting global concept. I mean, there's a Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 5, that talks about gender equality. In South Africa, we have a special relationship with concepts of equality and inclusion because we come from a very, very exclusionary past. And I think it's a huge opportunity. So the renewable energy industry in South Africa is only about 10 or 12 years old. It's very, very new. And what it offers us is the opportunity to grow an industry without the systemic and embedded barriers that other industries have been built on, which is why we believe that it is important for us to have the conversation. But more than that, I think that from an economic perspective, it's just a bad idea to exclude more than 50% of potential economic participants in any conversation. Global kind of studies also show us the benefits of having a diverse and inclusive workforce. You're able to capture ideas and values that are diverse and open, and it allows for innovative thought and thinking in workspaces.
Okay. And then let's talk about the energy sector for a minute. What is the energy sector? What does it include?
The energy industry is the ecosystem that provides and generates, transmits, and distributes electricity to us, right? The ecosystem includes those businesses that generate electricity. So Eskom is our utility scale energy producer in the country for a very long time, and they continue to have a monopoly. Independent power producers sell energy to Eskom, but independent power producers in this country are generally renewable energy companies. You have companies and businesses that generate electricity not for Eskom but directly for industries and corporates, usually renewable energy as well. You have small scale energy providers or energy businesses that install rooftop solar into households. You have lots of suppliers into the energy value stream, so goods and services provided to those businesses that are actually working to generate electricity. So the ecosystem is very large and it's growing, which is the huge opportunity for South Africans, for people working on the continent.
Why, as a country, do we like the idea, or are we looking to the idea of renewable energy? Is it because Eskom has started to show holes in its system? Is it because it has potential to overtake fossil fuel energy? Why are we looking to renewable energy these days?
So that's an interesting question. Why are we looking to renewable energy? So there's lots of different push and pull factors, right? The biggest push factor for South Africa and for countries in the global south has been pressure from the global north. But it's not necessarily difficult or bad pressure. So historically, energy systems across the world have been based on the burning of fossil fuels, which is awful for The environment, it's terrible in that it emits a lot of carbon, which contributes fundamentally to climate change and global warming and general environmental degradation. So a movement towards renewable energy allows us to start avoiding some of those emissions, and then hopefully at some point in time completely removing those emissions from those coal-fired power stations or fossil fuel-based power stations. How the global north enforces their intention for all of us to transition from dirty energy to clean energy is that they impose sort of premiums or requirements on capital provision. So what we're finding in the economics of the global market is that there's less money available for fossil fuel based energy provision than there is for renewable energy based energy provision, right? So the capital flows are tipping in favor of renewable energy provision, which is important for Africa to be aware of, because on the African continent it's the single biggest potential market for energy provision. Right now, only 30% of the continent has access to electricity. So there's 70% of the continent that's still looking for electricity options and opportunities. So it's a huge growing market in our context. That's a push factor. A pull factor in terms of renewable energy is that it takes very quickly to build a renewable energy facility. So if we look at South Africa, some of our newest coal-fired power stations took almost a decade, if not longer, to build, right? A renewable energy facility is up in 2 years, from the point of decision making to the point of operation. So it's a very quick source of electricity generation for us.
And then in South Africa's context, what moves have been made to further our renewable energy agenda by government, private facilities, the like?
So there's lots of moves that have been made. I mean, the energy regulatory landscape has shifted immensely over the last couple of years. Historically, there were caps on there was an upper limit in terms of the energy that you could provide for yourself. Those limits have essentially been lifted completely, so large businesses, large users of energy can procure their own independent power production projects and sell themselves electricity effectively, and they don't have to be reliant on Eskom anymore. Because of the energy crisis that we face and load shedding, a lot of individual households have been making plans for themselves in terms of installing rooftop solar. What we see globally is that the technology is becoming cheaper as there's increased demand, which means it's more and more affordable for people to install these solutions and procure these solutions. So the landscape has shifted a lot. And it's also because of the capital balances and the pace at which renewable energy can be deployed, it is essentially the technology of the future for us. So I think that the market is expanding. There's lots of job opportunities. There's lots of reskilling and skilling opportunities in the sector. It's fast growing and fast paced, which is a huge opportunity for young people to explore, because the sector in South Africa and globally is just growing.
And speaking of what it does for the youth, I was going to ask, what does this new growth in this sector look like for young people who are studying? Is South Africa going to be looking for more engineers or, stuff like that? Like, what opportunities are going to be birthed from this new era?
So that's a great question, and there's a myriad of opportunities, right? So yes, South Africa is going to be looking for more engineers, but South Africa is also going to be looking for more electrical technicians. And that's the sort of disconnect that we have in this country, is that while we have, there seems to be a pipeline of individuals entering into professional fields, we have less individuals entering into the technical specialities. And that's kind of where the critical skill is needed. We need technical skills, so we need electrical and electronic technicians of all sense. We need construction kind of technicians, because all of these things have to be built. We also need environmental scientists, water specialists, all related directly to the renewable energy industry, believe it or not. We need people who understand environmental impacts and are able to map them. We need people who understand social impacts and are able to map them. A lot of these projects are going to be built in rural areas, so we need community-based specialists. There are lots of new roads that are going to be built to provide access to these facilities, so we need road engineers and road technicians, civil engineers and structural engineers. We need lawyers that understand contracting in this space. We need financial professionals that understand project financial modeling in a way that's never been done before in South Africa. So there's a whole myriad of skills that are required that are not just the very, very technically specific skills, although those are also deeply required. I mean, if we look at sort of plug-ins into the renewable energy kind of value chain, South Africa's busy building a green hydrogen sector. In that space, we need people who understand electrolysis and chemical reactions. We need people who would be able to be technicians in the green hydrogen space. So if you imagine that big sort of plants and machinery is going to be moving from diesel powered to hydrogen powered, we need mechanics that understand how to work with, hydrogen based engine systems. So the landscape of career opportunities is completely shifting, and will continue to shift over the next 5 to 10 years.
It's interesting that you said that it would include jobs like electrical technicians, because it's not really a job that young people are looking to do.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? That we're, as young people, looking to work in offices rather than on skills that we could have in a year or two?
I think that young people in this country carry a lot of the hopes and dreams of their parents and previous generations, and I think that this is like it's something that we've been thinking about for like a long time, because it's relevant not just in South Africa but in the rest of the world as well. But in the South African context, it makes sense that most young South Africans, or the parents of most young South Africans, will want their kids to work in offices, because historically they weren't allowed to, right? And we want for our kids what we couldn't have. But at the same time, we know that wish is misguided, because the opportunities to build the South African economy rests in the hands that are able and willing to build it physically. Right? So what we find in our country, so even leaving aside the potential for the future, but right now, is that there's huge labor shortages in anything that requires physical labor plus technical competence. So plumbing and bricklaying and plastering and tiling, there are real shortages in the marketplace. Electricians, mechanics, there's been a shortage of diesel mechanics in South Africa for the last 20 years, but people are not studying, going to TVET colleges or FET colleges to study for technical skills, which is a great travesty. Even just regular mechanics, there's a fundamental shortage in the marketplace.
And I did have a question about these colleges that, specialize in these skills that we're seeing a shortage of. How can we attract young people to, find themselves in these spaces where South Africa desperately needs them? Like, how do we show that there is money here and there is opportunity here and growth?
That's a very good question. I don't have the answer to it. The number one imported skill in South Africa right now is sheep shearers.
Wow.
It's something that we would have never thunk. But also, like all skills pertaining specifically to the commercial agricultural industry, there's significant shortages in terms of certified people who have studied and practiced and developed competencies in those areas. And that's fascinating for me because we all need to eat. So it makes sense that if you have that skill, you will make a living. We don't all need lawyers, but it seems lots of kids want to study law.